Evening, members. Happy New Year to you all, and welcome to today's Economic and Planning and Housing Committee. So we go through the apologies first and absentees. So with Councillor Tuck is being replaced by Councillor Kay Watts. Councillor Goddison is being replaced by Councillor Phillimore. Councillor Isaac is being replaced by Councillor Volts. And Councillor Ibrahim is being replaced by Councillor Grant. Yep, so that's all good. That's it. And now do I do this? I've forgotten, it's been such a long time. Yeah, so a few housing bits. So fire evacuation procedure for the evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening, and therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the side of this room. Exit through the reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. This meeting is being webcast live on the internet and will be available to view on YouTube after the meeting. And mobile phones, please, can switch off your phones or put them to silent. Any declarations of interest? No, we're all good. Haven't been informed of any urgent items, so it's good. Minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of October. No, everybody's happy? Cool, it's good, isn't it? Item 5, the Authority Monitoring Report for Planning 22 to 23. The way I was going to play this was the portfolio holder was going to introduce these little bit, and then I was going to, if anybody wanted to talk about the executive summary, we can have a little bit on that, but mainly I was just going to go straight into appendices 1 and go for each sort of policy, and then people and members can make comments to the portfolio then. So that's the way I was going to play it. So if you wanted to fire away then, Andy, cheers.
Well, thank you, Chair, and Happy New Year to everyone. This is quite a strange report to be presenting because obviously it relates to the year ending in April 2023. So we as administration weren't actually empowered then, so this relates to the previous administration. However, it's a document that is now on our website, and it's only fair that we go through proper scrutiny, which is why I'm here this evening. Overall, I think it paints a relatively positive picture for most areas. However, there are two key indicators where we need to do better. The first one relates to the 5-year housing land supply, the second to affordable homes. I'll very briefly go through these. I'm sure we'll touch them in more detail during the meeting itself. So with the 5-year housing land supply, obviously that's something that we've lacked for a number of years now. We are currently in the process, as you all know, of getting our local plan ready for Regulation 18 consultation. That's going up to Cabinet next week. If that does go through Cabinet, we go to Regulation 18 consultation, then we no longer need a 5-year housing land supply. The new MPPF tells us that we only need a 4-year housing land supply. So all of the issues that we've had with the tilted balance will disappear hopefully in a few weeks' time, assuming that the local plan does go to consultation later on this month. The second point was around the lack of affordable homes. So this is now the second year in which we've missed our affordable homes target, and the pipeline isn't looking particularly healthy either going forward. So the numbers are unlikely to be better in the near future. Again, it's something we're working on as administration. As you'll be aware, at the start of the last calendar year, we put forward a motion while still in opposition around restarting the council house building programme. And that's something that we've investigated since then. I think a paper went to this committee at the tail end of last year, exploring initial options. That's something we'll continue to push forward and continue to involve this committee on. Very briefly, before I hand back over to you, just a final point, which is to welcome our new Head of Planning and Infrastructure, Jenny Jackson, who only joined us on the 2nd of January. So it's only her third day with us. And I guess it's going to be a bit of a baptism of fire coming to the EPH on the annual monitoring report. But hopefully you'll still stay with us, Jenny, after tonight. And on that note, I will hand back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. You're quite happy to take a few questions, Andy? Yep.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, you've mentioned the 5-year housing land supply. Now, there was an appeal in this very room in December, which indicated from the developer that actually that number is below 4. And our position is not robust. And I'll just be really honest with you, if it is at 3.8% or 8 years, then we have a major problem. And speculative development will continue.
Thank you, Ken, for that. No, according to the latest calculations, it is now at 4.6 years, and I'll hand over to Joe to explain the maths behind that.
Thanks for that. No, so the AMR says it's 4.27. So obviously we've had the MPPF that's been published since the AMR was published. So that has caused a couple of changes to the calculation. We no longer have to apply a 5% buffer. So that's gone, so that now helps the position. Also, from the standard method perspective, you'll know that our figure was 850. Because we're now in a new calendar year, the projections move from 24 to 34. So that changes the standard method. Our standard method is now 830 rather than 850. So if you put those together, that ups us up to our 4.6.
Thank you. Any more? So, any comments on the executive summary, or should we go straight into the appendices? I can find what page it is on. It says it page 22, is it? 19, sorry, yeah. Right, so should we just go? Does anybody want to talk about spatial characteristics of the borough on page 19, 37? Or section 2, yeah? No, we're all good. Page 20, housing affordability, prices and rent. Sure.
Does the portfolio holder accept that with a likely reduction in numbers if we move the local plan forward under his auspices, the likelihood is that with less houses being delivered or aimed to be delivered during any calendar year, the likelihood is that prices will rise because of the shortage of supply, and therefore there is less likelihood of people being able to afford to get on the market level of housing. How can he square those two things?
Thank you, Ken. I think that's a really good question. The reality is as you know, we know from our basic economics that demand and supply create a market price, and as you say, the textbook theory is that as you increase supply, price should drop. Of course, the reality is that it doesn't work that way. Developers aren't going to increase house building in a way that's going to reduce house prices and therefore reduce their profit margins. And we've seen that as new homes have been built in our borough over the past few decades, house prices have continued to rise. So the basic textbook economic link between increasing supply and reducing price doesn't work as far as the housing market is concerned, which I think is why there is so much regulation around it, and why the government is so keen for us and other local authorities to build so many new homes. In terms of the point around affordable housing, I think that's absolutely key. We need desperately need more affordable housing in our borough. And as I mentioned earlier, it's something that we as administration are pushing really hard. You've already seen the initial results of our work on that front, and that is something we will continue to bring forward and until we start getting additional delivery, because that's crucial to us. And I absolutely agree with you that we need more affordable housing in this borough.
Thank you, Chair. You've dealt with the market housing and have alluded to where we are on affordable housing, but obviously there are a lot of people who use the private rented sector, and with a lack of supply, unfortunately, those individuals who have to use the private market for their homes are being squeezed. Can we find some solution to ensure that they are not always the last thought of? We think of social housing, we think of market housing, and then we think of the private rented sector, which they always seem to be last in our priority list. So I ask and I urge you to do something that would help that sector.
Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, I concur in a way that we've got to increase our socially rented sector, and hopefully the new administration is going to do that. Historically, of the 986 we provided, only 14 were socially rented. I think that's appalling.
That only 14 were social rented, and 149 were affordable at 80, which is about 80%. So that's not really good enough, and we really need to improve on that. It's not acceptable. And there's also a huge number were flats, and they weren't family homes. There was a very high percentage of flats in amongst that. I think 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, I think it was about 66% of the properties built.
Joe?
Yeah, I concur. Obviously, the whole point of having the motion about council houses was to provide socially rented homes at a price that people can afford. And I'm pretty sure that the EPH meeting, there was some discussion about the 5,000 people that are currently on our waiting list, and only 2 of them could actually afford affordable housing. Now, I know the government have just trying to change some of the local allowances, so that might change a little bit. But quite honestly, if we build affordable houses, they are still probably not going to hit the market that you're referring to. And I quite agree. My own son is in the rental market, and his landlord keeps telling him he's going to put the price up, and obviously looking at mortgages and everything else. It is a vicious circle for some people because they can't afford to rent, they can't afford to buy, they can't afford to raise money for a mortgage. And that's why they're on our waiting list, and goodness knows where they're living. They're sofa surfing or staying with relatives much longer. So we do need to move ahead with our plans to actually produce council housing, or I'm still going to call them council houses, whether anybody likes it or not, because that will actually help deliver for what people really want.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, thanks. So I agree that we need to provide more affordable housing. I won't call it council housing. However, what I will say, just to come back on something that Karen said, we need to be careful that it's the housing register that drives the demands, because the largest demand for the housing register are for 1-bedroom flats. So absolutely that needs to be the priority to get our housing register down. Thank you.
Are you ready to come back with a quick one?
One point that I missed, Mr Chairman, is obviously Councillor Atkins mentioned the rented sector, but unfortunately some of our housing rules work against us, because once people are in the rented sector, we count them as adequately housed, and that's very difficult to get out of that position.
So move on to page 21, 39. Jenny?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, at the bottom of page, is it the bottom? Yeah, beginning of page 21, actually. Economy, sorry. Could I just ask for a quick clarification of fact, because I've only just noticed it and I apologise. But 2.9 talks about 8.4% of the borough's working population is economically active, which is higher than the South East average 80.7 and England average 87.6. So that's not correct. Have I misunderstood that? So we're below the English average.
Yeah, apologies. I spotted that one this afternoon myself. So yeah, it's the 7 and the 8 around the wrong way. So it should be 78.6. So I will correct that.
Thank you, that's good to know. So we are still in the right place. Thank you.
Madam Jenny, house point for you. So we want to go on page 22. Any on section 3, progress with planning documents? No. Oh, Ken, yep.
Firstly, I want to put it on record that I am pleased that we are moving forward with the local plan. I think everybody knew my stand when my party delayed it. I didn't think it helped anybody, and I think it was a mistake. It gave speculative developers another year to have their way with us. But I also want to note the neighbourhood plans that we've adopted. I just want to make it very clear that they are so valuable. Without those neighbourhood plans, certainly Ashford Hill would have had the likelihood of 2 large developments on the periphery of it. And therefore, through you, Chair, and obviously you as the portfolio holder, I urge everybody to make sure that the local plans or neighbourhood plans are up to date as we move forward with our local plan. I think it's so vital that we as ward councillors have a big influence in our parishes, especially in the outlying areas, to ensure that they keep their neighbourhood plans up to date and that they are reasonable in their expectations, frankly. To have some development if it's the right and sustainable thing, but if it's not, then to object and to make sure that they have settlement boundaries or whatever is applicable to them to stop the development. So I just wanted to encourage that through you and this committee.
Any more on local development schemes? Go to the next page, 24, local, Ken's already alluded to it, neighbourhood development plans. Any more for that? Page, sorry, go.
I don't want to comment as well as Ken all night, but I do support neighbourhood plans. I haven't in the past because when we didn't have a 5-year land supply, some of them weren't worth the paper they were written on. But now we're moving in the right direction. Of course we support them.
Yeah, I'll add my comments on this. I mean, I'm going to disagree with Ken. I'm disappointed that the local plan was moved on as it was. I still think that we could have challenged the number. I accept the fact there's a need for affordable housing in the borough. There's other tools within our capability to do that. The NPPF only requires 10% of developments to be affordable housing. We could have, and this authority has been delivering 40% housing. Why wasn't that even looked at? You're talking about council housing on the other side of the room, but absolutely there's authority-led developments that deliver up to 100% affordable housing. So I think there would have been a way that all sides could have been happy, I think, which would absolutely have looked to deliver more affordable housing, but perhaps protected a little bit more of our rural countryside. I will say, though, that I'm absolutely a proponent of neighbourhood planning. We can't stop development. I think we all have to accept that as the population grows. And this is the conversation I have with my residents, my rural wards and with the parish councils. And I say to them, you will never stop development. However, what a neighbourhood plan does, it allows you to engage and have that conversation with the community to plan where that development goes, because I think that's very important. So absolutely, I concur with the comments of Ken and Colin, and I would commend any parish council or town council that does look to do their own neighbourhood planning. And it gives them more SIL money as well. It gives them an extra 10%. Yeah, thank you.
Cool, excellent. Page 25, supplementary planning documents. No. 26, climate emergency declaration. No. 27, ever policy documents, including local plan update evidence. So we've got all those, had all those reports over the last couple of years. Nope, we're all good. Page 29. Oh, it's gone then, David, far away.
Yeah, sorry. We've got a timescale there for the water cycle study, which was May 22, but I believe there was going to be a bit of work to redraft that and add an appendix in. I think the portfolio holder told us.
Yes, that's correct. There'll be an addendum that will be published as part of the Reg 18 information.
Thank you. Page 29, Article 4.
Article 4.
I've gone in.
Direction. You will know that I asked a question at council about this. It doesn't refer to HMOs in this. It's obviously the move from commercial into development. And obviously this is to report on what's happened in the past. But I would emphasise again that we are currently struggling with people who are round the back way actually producing homes that are turning into HMOs, causing issues. So I hope that moving forward that we can look at whether there are other areas where there needs to be an Article 4 direction, please.
At the bottom of the page, you've got SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy. No. Next page, top of the page, Section 4, Duty to Cooperate. Any more on that? Kenya?
Obviously, we've had this duty to cooperate sitting around for a while. Can you give us some feeling as to where everybody is, Winchester, Wokingham, on their local plan updates? We've just had the Berkshire one. You don't know whether going yes, maybe no, not sure. So this duty to cooperate, is it likely to be enforceable, or because we already do our numbers and are a economic development hotspot in terms of unemployment, are we likely to land up with some of their need or some of their responsibility?
As always, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of where the neighbouring authorities are, but quite a lot of them are very similar to us, actually, that they're at a relatively early stage in their plan-making process. East Hants, for example, are exactly the same timescale as us, but Winchester are very similar, West Berks and Wokingham, quite a lot of them are in that process of doing it, so we're having quite a lot of interesting conversations with them all at the moment about those things. The only things that have come up in terms of formally sort of asking us about it is gypsy and traveller provision, because that's obviously an issue across the wider area, and also from Wokingham's perspective, potentially employment as well, that they've got a lot of employment to do, more for on the M4 corridor, so they've asked all the Berkshire authorities, but have also asked us as well, whether we can help them with that. We haven't had any requests at the moment about housing and housing delivery numbers.
Thank you, Chair. So I would be interested in exactly what the duty to cooperate conversation is with AWE. I have a lot of friends who work there. I have colleagues on the other side of the floor who obviously represent Tadley and have expressed concern about how Tadley grows and how it's meant to adapt, how it's meant to accommodate its growing population. My friends who work at AWE mention the fact that the number 2 bus isn't very regular going up there. I think it's every 15-20 minutes. Parking on site is at a premium, which means that if we're building homes to accommodate that growth in other parts of the borough, unfortunately, we're not really meeting our policy needs to reduce unnecessary car transport. So I guess the conversation really is, if AWE want to attract people and have people work there, then I think they need to play a little bit of the game with us and work out how we can come to a common consensus there.
And we've had conversations with all of the sort of relevant bodies in terms of Tadley as part of the evolving local plan, really, to see what the strategy should be for that area, particularly the emergency planners. Their position at the moment is that they won't support any allocations in that area within the DPZ, hence why we've kind of done it as we have in the current plan.
Thank you. I'm part of the AW Liaison Committee, and at the meeting in November, we actually persuaded the AWE people that we will provide some information to encourage people to get on the bus that costs £2 each way. At the moment, they go past a garage in Tadley that's charging a huge amount of money for petrol, and I stand and watch them all drive past me while I'm waiting for the bus, thinking, why would you get in a car? Because it is far too expensive compared to the bus route. So we are going to do some videos to encourage them to all get out of their vehicles and hopefully get on the bus at least. If they go to Basingstoke, of course, but an awful lot of people come from Newbury and Reading, and the bus service to those areas is abominable. And they are looking at producing a new bus service that takes people from the site to Aldermaston railway station, which seems a sensible run because obviously we haven't got any railway stations and Aldermaston's the nearest one, but of course there's no contact. So we are working, obviously, I'm the borough representative on there, we are working with AWE to encourage them to get out of their cars.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur with that. I work at AWE actually, so declaring interest. If you don't leave AWE by 4:15, you're snarled up in Tadley. So yeah, that's where it is. So yeah. Ken?
Yeah, and to Joe's point, if I may, we do need to, and I'll be bringing this up at Cabinet on Tuesday, we need to have a different relationship with West Berkshire in terms of emergency plan. This is just, it's outrageous that we have not contacted the government enough to say we need to be masters of our own situation, and why should emergency planners in West Berkshire have the whip hand on what should and shouldn't be developed within Tadley. I think the bus service is all right. I take it, not as often as you, Joe, but I take it to go to the railway station, and I find it 15-20 minutes. I know it might seem a long time if you're waiting there, but I think it's a great service and one that we should commend Stagecoach for delivering.
You. So, section 5, page 5032, housing policies. So housing delivery 5.1. No, we're all good. And on page 33. Yep, all good. Page 34. David?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I just want to give my thanks to the planning team because obviously we have over-delivered the target that was meant to be there, and I appreciate that. Everybody gives you a hard time, in particular a very vocal councillor who I won't name because it's like Beetlejuice might turn up behind me or something like that. But I'd like to thank you for the hard work that you've put in for the last year, and it's good to see that over delivery there of housing. Thank you.
Ken?
I think from previous meetings, we don't get credit for the small windfall sites. Is that still correct? In terms of our delivery on throughout the year.
Yeah, we talk about that in a later section, but yes, we do. I mean, anything that's delivered, we count towards our numbers, whether it's windfall or not. Yeah.
Thank you. So, any more? We can go on to the 5-year land supply on page 36. I know we've already chat. Sorry, Colin. Yeah.
David earlier mentioned the demand for flats, but unfortunately, the permit development sector is the ones that is providing the flats.
Right, and so page 36, 5-year land supply. Joe and Andy have already sort of discussed that and the changes going forward on Reg 18, 4 years.
We have, as a nation, taken in over 700,000 migrants this year, legally, plus another 40 odd illegal. There has to be at some point a additional delivery requirement by places like Basingstoke and Dean for those 700,000. Now, if that continues for another 25 years, that's 20 million people extra in this country. Now, I'm not a scientist, but people will all strive for a home or somewhere safe, warm, comfortable, and close to their working environment. Is there anything that you're getting from central government that has made any additional, or likely any additional requirement for a wealthy borough like ours at Basingstoke and Dean to accommodate some of this overflow of people who come to our country?
Not at the moment, because we're using a standard method, so that's using the population projections. The government has said that they will review the standard method in light of updated projections, which will take into account migration, etc. And they're due to do that next year. So we will have to see what the implications are at that point.
Thanks. Can I just clarify something that the portfolio holder said earlier on, talking about the 5-year land supply and how the changes to the MPPF remove that mitigation? Can you just clarify, because I thought you said, I took the impression that because we're going to Reg 18, that negates that, but my understanding is the plan needs to be made before it changes that?
No, we've sought legal advice already on this because it was one of the elements that was consulted upon in the draft MPPF from December 2022, and it was contained in the draft that came out just before Christmas. So once you go to Regulation 18 consultation, the requirement for a 5-year housing land supply drops to a 4-year housing land supply.
Thank you. Page 36, housing requirements. Still on 5-year land supply, and page 37, land supply position. 38. And page 39. No, all good. Page 40, planning consents. Ken?
When I saw the number of planning consents for last year and this year, it is
Oh yeah,
staggering.
it's amazing, isn't it?
We've got over 7,000 planning requests. Now, I wonder if I could ask the portfolio holder to lobby government to ask if we can have a small council tax on all of those, which would help our finances. And of course, it would help many local government authorities who are in financial trouble at the moment. Everybody needs something, but to land bank that amount of planning permissions is scandalous. And even if it was, we require it after a year, or we require a set amount, or based upon what's going to be delivered there, because we know that from the planning permission that's been given. So we charge a greater levy for the 5 bedrooms that haven't been delivered yet. I do think it is a scandal that developers have the right to bank this, wait till the economic climate or the price of houses goes up before they start delivering the homes that we have spent all of the money upstairs in our planning team to produce for them. I just think it is something that you could do, and we should be, we as Southern authorities should be lobbying on, because there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of planning permissions given but not enacted.
I'm happy to do that, Ken. I like you. I think it's scandalous that we've got 7,500 homes that have permission but haven't been built when we've got almost 5,000 people on our housing register waiting list. It's ridiculous. So yes, I'm very happy to lobby government for that. I think, Joe, I might be wrong that there was something in the MPPF consultation about changing the rules to encourage developers to build. I'm not quite sure what the outcome to that was. I'm putting you both on the spot there.
You're right, there is something in there and they are looking at that, but we will have to wait and see what the outcome is of that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Small print, yeah. Any more on planning consents? Page 41, delivery of local plan allocations. And we go through like loads of tables on the next few pages. So just shout, I'll read the page numbers, and if anybody wants to shout, just stick your hand up. 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 46, Sean? 45, yeah.
That's 45. Just obviously on the many down, have we any idea when the first house is going to be built? It just says further technical work is taking place to move towards building, but there doesn't seem to be any detail on that.
The honest answer is I don't know at the moment. We are progressing everything. I think we're working towards a full and final agreement with the other parties involved to take that forward. And I think once we've cleared that hurdle, we'll be in a better position to give an idea of when housing delivery is likely to start. But from our perspective, as an authority, as a cabinet, and I'm sure from probably as a local authority as a whole, we're keen for that to begin as quickly as possible. We've waited too long for that.
Thank you. 46, 47, and 48.
Yeah.
Ken?
If I can go to Hanson Fields, the delivery there is likely to be delayed in some way, shape or form, because we, as a DC committee, refused the application for Gypsy and Traveller pitches, which was integral to the delivery of houses, or the second stage or third stage of houses. It is, my view is that we can, when they're such important sites, that we bring in the developers and find out what the hell they're doing. Because, it's in our local plan, the delivery is there, they've started. We do need to get these people to the table to make sure that we can understand what their procedure is to deliver these houses. Because obviously we have a social housing allocation up at Hanson Fields as well. And I just want things to move quicker. We as a local authority do pretty well. Our planning team are excellent. But once it gets to the developer's hands, it seems to slow down and just go into well, maybe sometime when it suits us regime. So I don't think that is acceptable, and I wonder if we can think about ways to encourage developers to do what is required to deliver all of the sections of their planning permission.
Thank you. Page 49, homes built on previously developed land. I've just got one, Joe, I mentioned to you the other night about the golf club, 49 dwellings. That's a greenfield site, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it relates to where that development was on the site, but we have looked into it because it comes from the Hampshire County Council records. I think that will be updated, and it should, other than the majority of the site is greenfield, even though there's some brownfield on there. So yes, we'll look at
the target a little bit now, I think. But yeah. So any more on? No. Page 50, windfall sites. I think you mentioned something about windfall sites, Ken, already, haven't you? So. You may.
Previously developed land, the whole section essentially. It is important that we use previous developed land, and I know from, I haven't read all of the cabinet papers for Tuesday because there's quite a lot of papers. Is the idea that the administration are going to build denser within the town, and obviously that may well mean upwards on previously developed land. Are we going to have structures so as it's not more than 10 stories high, or it has to be X, Y, or Z? Are we going to have structures so as previously developed land we can have a chart against the guidelines so So as everybody knows that if something's going to go up within the town, it's not going to be monstrous and horrible and things like that, or close to some of the conservation areas, which obviously are really important to all of us, I think. So as we've got some boundaries for us at DC, but also so as we as a council understand what is going to happen within the borough and certainly the town, which is obviously the mainstay of housing.
Yeah, you're right, Ken. We are looking at building more housing or allocating more housing to the town centre within the local plan update. However, we don't want to go start creating tower blocks, high density tower blocks. So there is guidance in the local plan when you get to that bit, and admittedly it is towards the end of the appendix 1, so you might not have got there yet, which gives sort of indicative guidance in terms of the density for areas in the town centre and also some of the surrounding rural and urban centres that we've got.
Will that also include spatial standards as well? Because we've, with Churchill Plaza, as Paul Harvey and myself have discussed earlier, are too small. I mean, they're frankly rabbit hutches.
Yeah, there is, for the first time in this local plan update, there is a policy around minimum spatial standards. However, we are not allowed to go to be more rigorous than national policy. So effectively it's just replicating national policy. The challenge we have, and I think Churchill Plaza is an example of this, is that's a permitted development scheme, and obviously the normal house spatial standards don't apply equally as well with affordable affordable housing section 106. So I think the issues that we've got, and I think we do come on to talk about that a little bit later on in this document, the schemes that are particularly bad from a space standard are the ones which are permitted development. But certainly, as far as the local plan update goes, we are doing absolutely everything we can to make sure that developers build properties that are fit for purpose.
Cool, excellent. Windfall sites. Chloe?
Just wonder whether a large site windfall could also be known as a speculative development. They're talked about positively here, but in another way, do we really want to be seeing a large number of windfall sites coming forward?
The term windfall is just a known planning phrase, really, that it's any site that isn't actually allocated in a plan. So it could be speculative development, it could be lots of different things, really, but that's what windfall actually means.
Yeah, if a site is recognised within a neighbourhood plan, is that also known as windfall from our perspective?
If it's allocated in any plan, so that's neighbourhood plans and local plans, that's not windfall. Yeah, it's anything that's not allocated.
Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, I appreciate the Chair. This is a historic document, but as a previous director of Basingstoke Town Football Club, I'd just like to ask about the 85 dwellings at Camber's, because that site is now for sale by the owner, and wonder if you've heard of any changes to that 85.
Question 2.
Paul, I'm no longer the leader, but I'm happy to take on that responsibility.
You, Ken.
I know, it's fine.
It's a question of the portfolio holder.
It's asking you, Andy.
Yeah, the honest answer is I don't know, Colin. If we can talk to the cabinet member for sport and leisure, obviously that's part of his portfolio. It's something he regularly engages with the football club about the future of their presence in the town.
Sorry, Andy, it's not a football club issue. It's a number of houses on the site issue that I was asking the question about, and without going into too much detail, we do own 29% of that land as well.
There was like 85 homes, plus there was old people's accommodation there as well. So, yeah, so in total it was about 180 off the top of my head. So, yeah.
I think the question was, is anything going to change?
Well, the planning consent is the planning consent. So, I mean, it's possible that a new owner would look at getting changing the planning conditions and potentially increasing density, but they'll have to go through the planning process again in order to make any material changes to the planning consent that already exists.
Yeah, thanks. Because the football club is now on the table, and following up Colin's question there, the council do own almost 30% of the land there. So what is the plan that we're going to do with that?
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
So we got any more on windfall sites, large or small? No. So that takes us up to page 55, regeneration sites. No, we're all good. Oh, carry on, Ken.
I was on the DC committee that approved the Winklebury regeneration, and I have to say there are areas of our borough that look tired and need regeneration. So if there is anything that can be done to move forward Buckskin, Southam and Norden, I think it would be really useful, not just for us as a borough, but it's a showcase for what we can do. We have seen in the past that when we get it right, it's really good. Sometimes we don't get it right all the time. So I think there is, and luckily we've got the Director of Regeneration here, there is a responsibility to make sure that what comes forward is as good as it can be and takes account of local issues, but also gives them something to look forward to. We all look forward to Christmas. These could be the Christmas presents for people who live in these areas. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo that, Ken. As you say, we're making progress on that. We have a new director for regeneration to head up the work there. The local plan update has a policy specifically about regeneration, which includes Winklebury in there. And we are having conversations with some of the social housing providers about getting them to invest in some of the areas of the borough that you've mentioned. So I think we'll be seeing quite a lot of progress on that in the future. And I suspect that there will be papers around that which will come to EPH's way in order to brief you on that and to scrutinise those proposals.
Thank you. Page 56, density, residential development. I think we touched upon that in the town centre. Yeah.
I know, yeah, I'm sorry, you will. Density is really important part of regeneration. We all know that Winklebury, Norden, the amount of garages that are there that are not used as proper garages because they're not the right size. We need to ensure that our housing association partners make sure they use the best use of the land that is available to make sure it's not just something that is a storage unit for the houses, but is actually can be used. We will have to have community cars in some of these garages. So I do urge that density is looked at to make sure that we have to go up a few stories, 4 stories or whatever it is, but we do need to make sure that the density matches our need for the housing and to make sure that they get the right facilities as we're running the regeneration.
Yeah, I agree. We need to make efficient use of the scarce land we have available for development, and those conversations are being had with our social housing partners.
Thank you. Page 57, location of new housing. Goes over the page to 58 and 59. Yep, Colin.
I want to keep up with Ken. Basic question, it might be to Joe actually, but what's the point of having the settlement boundary when we're ignoring them?
Well, that's the general approach. That obviously we want to focus development within built-up areas and protect the countryside. We do have exception policies where you can put some housing in the countryside under particular circumstances, so that accounts for quite a lot of these. But then obviously we know the 5-year land supply position, and that means that we have lost some appeals and things because of that. So it's a sort of combination of those things which has led to those numbers.
Thank you. So any more on those particular items? Allocation and new homes. That goes to over to 16 as well. Go on to page 61 then, new homes around nuclear installations. Joe?
Yeah, you might expect me to say something about this. I was quite surprised to see the information in here about the windfall that happened at Tadley 42 to 46 New Road, which is McCarthy and Stone's development, which isn't quite complete yet. It did amaze us that actually the Office of Nuclear Regulation and MOD didn't actually comment on this and allowed it to go through, which, because of the cost of those houses, is not for people to downsize that already live in Tadley. It is for people that are probably going to come from places like Surrey and they're going to downsize into McCarthy and Stone. So it's going to bring extra people in. One of the concerns that we've raised over a number of years is the inconsistency of when people object and don't object. So I was quite pleased to read in the local plan that it's quite clear that we're going to try and move forward and have some consistency about our approach with West Berkshire. I know Ken and I probably have a disagreement about why West Berkshire have a say about emergency planning. As a former emergency planner, we do need to have an emergency plan, and just because there's a line in West Berkshire and Hampshire, it's still going to apply to Tadley because we live next door to AWE and we can't move because that's where we are. So I'm obviously disappointed that some things got through because there wasn't a consistent approach in up to 23. And moving forward, I hope with the new local plan that we are going to have more consistency. At least that gives security. When I get people saying to me, why was that site not allowed when I only wanted to build 2 houses and I got told no? And that is the problem, is the residents who are concerned that some things get through and some things don't. What we do need to have is some consistency so people do know it's either yes or no, and it's across the board. Everyone is treated the same.
Thank you.
Obviously, I have a bit of Tadley as my ward. Frankly, I agree with you, Joe. We do need consistency, but we need organic growth as well. And you know, my point about West Berkshire's involvement in the emergency planning is not that I don't agree with emergency planning. I certainly do, but I do think we should, on our own stretch, have some of the control, and some of the conversations should be better. So I like organic growth. So 2s, 3s, 4s, I think are acceptable. The problem will come, of course, that we cannot supply social housing to the many people who are on our social housing list in Tadley. And that is a scandal, frankly, that we are saying to them, to 2040, I'm sorry, you can't get this. And people say, well, why is the social housing list small in Tadley? I'll tell you why, because people are registering for Basingstoke because they work here in Basingstoke. So lots of people who work in the hospital live in Tadley, come up the road, and they've put themselves on the housing list in Basingstoke because they know they've got no chance of getting a social house in Tadley. And that is outrageous, that they can't get their family support where they've been brought up, they can't get a home where they've been brought up, and they can't get a social house if they require it. I think you as an administration need to think about how you treat Tadley. And it is at the end of a road where there are 2 big blocks of employment, AWE, there's 3,500 people there, and currently the hospital has nearly 12,000 employees in it who go back and forward and take a car in most cases because their home is not close to where they work. And we need to think about how we can change that that prism of always thinking Tadley last, because that's how it's starting to appear. Tadley last. Now, I accept, Joe, we won't always agree on sites, but we need to have some sort of organic growth within Tadley and the surrounding areas, because it will die. The population, you know, is getting older. There are primary schools that do not have enough pupils in it now. Well, who wants to be in charge when primary schools are closing? That is not what I see for Tadley and the surrounding area. It's not good, and we need to sort it out.
Joe.
I agree with Ken. A lot of people are very concerned about that we haven't got any development in Chadley. We're not providing for our local people. And obviously, it's not of our making. I mean, we didn't choose to be where we are. So I think we do need to think about it. The other problem, of course, is there's no development, there's no 106 money. So we're not getting any infrastructure, and we might come on to that later, but I'll be in a bit in advance now. Is that obviously we could apply for SIL money, but if you actually look at how much money has been spent in Tadley on 106 and SIL, it's absolutely not even mentioned. Neither is Bulkhurst or Pamba with the built-up area, because we're all considered to be in the same ilk. So it is a problem that we've got. I've no idea whether there's a solution to it, but obviously it needs to be very carefully handled. And while a lot of people in Tadley might be quite grateful they're not suddenly going to get lots of new housing because the infrastructure is crumbling, again, there are other people who need homes. And I quite agree. We do need affordable homes for our local residents, but I've even asked about exemption sites and been told that, again, MOD will object to them. So it's no point us looking for potential exemption sites. Pamba Heath got one on Pamba Heath Road a few years ago. But, you know, there may be some very small pockets in Tadley that we could put exemption sites. But we have basically got no land because of the constrictions that we've got around Tadley anyway. So unless we start building up, which I'm not particularly thinking people would like that. But again, we've got all these constraints, and whether or not we have a discussion at some point about how we can deal with the issue of not just of Tadley, but also Bulkhurst and the built-up part of Pamba as well, because that is now included in one settlement boundary.
Thank you. Points are noted there. Thank you. Page 63. Type of housing delivered. 63 and 65. And on page 66, we're on affordable housing. Nothing on 67 and 68. 69. 70. 71, housing for older people and people with support needs. No. Yeah, I expect we'll all get there one day, won't we? Sorry.
It is true that we do need to think about providing homes for older people, because we know that there are a lot of older people now living in 3-bedroom houses, and they've usually lost one of their partners, and they may have been there a long while. And where do they downsize to if there isn't sufficient housing? So we do need to have a strategy that actually provides homes for people of all ages, not just at the bottom end, the young people, but the older people to downsize into. So that releases 3-bedroom to 4-bedroom houses for families to building. And that might be one of the things in Tadley that we could do, is actually release some of those AWE houses that have been there since the 1950s, and many people are still resident there. And they won't move because they want to stay within the area, but there isn't anywhere for them to downsize into that they can afford. So it's again, we've got catch-22. I'm sure that's the same in other parts of the borough and other villages, that people stay in houses longer than they should or would wish to, because there isn't really an alternative. And unless we actually concentrate and build the right type of houses, exactly why we're talking about council houses, is that we build a mixture of houses that do everything for everybody, not just the young, but the old and the families as well.
Obviously, we went through the housing numbers back a couple of pages back, and you've detailed 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. There's no detailing of how many bungalows we've had. I wonder if that would be something that we could add to the monitoring report in the future.
Cool, thank you.
I just want to pick up on the point about larger houses that have like an older resident. I think sometimes it's not just that they don't want to move, but I think we have to be kind of take a different approach to those residents, because I think they might be open to the option of doing it, but in putting their hand up about it, going from perhaps a 3 or 4 bedroom house where they're the sole occupant, they're then sort of offered perhaps a 1 bedroom over 55s flat. And I don't think they're then willing to perhaps go from one extreme to another, but I think there is a middle ground if we just have much more sort of empathetic conversations with residents where there's a couple in a 3 or 4 bedroom house, or indeed a single person, I think might be happy to move into a 2-bed house, which I think we're building in abundance, and freeing up those 3 and 4 bedroom homes for families. I think with 4 bedroom homes, families need those homes for 10 or 20 years. It takes 10 or 20 years for them to qualify for that home, get to the front of the queue for that 4 bedroom home, by which point they don't need it anymore. So I think we have to take a really different approach to it, and I think there are families, if we're really honest, that need a 4 bedroom home today that can honestly say, I'm not going to need this 4 bedroom home in 20 years' time. And whilst it might not be a popular thing to talk about, I think we probably should, on those sort of unusually large homes, think about tenancies that are perhaps have a break clause in, or at least have some sort of conversation after a certain amount of time to say, now's the time to let this family that do really need the 4 bedroom home use it. But I don't know what the answer is without sounding mean.
Thank you. Page 73, self-build and custom house building.
Thank you. I've already sent a note to portfolio holder and the leader about this. I think it's really important that we give people opportunity to build their own house or to custom build where they live. And therefore, I'm encouraged that we are going to do it on our big sites, as what's been allayed so far. The problem I see is that they will be the last to be delivered, because if you're self-building, you don't build as quickly as Barrett's or Bewley or whoever, and therefore the people who've bought their house are living next to a building site. So I have suggested already to the portfolio that we have a one site or 2 sites within the borough that are self and custom built, because that will allow our planning team much better control. They'll have a better understanding of what's going to be delivered. People who live next door will understand if the guttering's not up or whatever. So I know the plan is to have these self-builds amongst our big buildings, especially at Manydown. But I would encourage that we think about plots or groups of plots together, so as we can say that's our self-built area. And I think genuinely that will be much quicker, much easier to deliver for our plan team. Obviously, in terms of costs, will be better, but it will also allow the market houses to get going, without people going, well, I don't want to buy that house because it's next door to somebody who's self-building, and I don't really want to do that. So I think there is massive merit in allowing people to do what they want to do, and as we've seen from the figures, lots of people want to be part of that. And we're going to have a new hospital with new consultants, with people who are in the life sciences and everything else, who are those sort of aspirational people who want to self-build their house or custom build, maybe like in Cherwell where they have the golden brick world, where they've delivered multiple houses across many schemes of different sorts, and that adds to the character and difference of what we should want. We don't want bog standard all the time. We want something that's a little bit exceptional. So I encourage you to, through the local plan process, to think maybe we should have something that's a bit different. Maybe there is a way of encouraging urban and civic to have a self-build, custom-built area rather than scattergun it across the big site. So I just bring that to mind. I'm encouraged that there are so many people who want to be, want to think about their own home in their own way to allow them to live the way they want. Great.
Thank you. So that takes us up to top of page 79 on self-build, and then go on to gypsy and traveller accommodation. Any members want to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken.
Well, firstly, the 4 pitches that were approved in Headley were a complete disaster. The local settled community hated them. They were in the wrong place. It's just that the applicant got it through appeal. It's not right that we don't have gypsy and traveller positions. And my view, as I've already alluded to, is that we get a large pitch, a large site, where scattergun approach across all the big sites has not, in my view, worked. We have seen from Handsome Fields that people don't want them. The neighbours didn't want them. So the settled community didn't want them. The new housing didn't want them. And the gypsy and travellers didn't want them. So we've got to find a new plan. And just to say, the site at Headley has now been approved for housing. So those 4 don't exist anymore. So any illusion that we've done our 5-year housing or gypsy and traveller pitches is not correct. And we need to find a different way to provide for these people in a way that does not affect the settled community. So I'm suggesting to you is you find somewhere where it's acceptable through the Gypsy and Traveller Forum or with our own Gypsy and Traveller officer to find somewhere which would be suitable to give us the numbers, a site that we approve of, because currently it doesn't work. And the pushback from developers is huge. Handsome Fields is a terrible example of they don't want to deliver those houses, those pitches, so they leave it to the very last minute to do and try and find a way of wriggling out of it. Well, we can't. It's a commitment. That's how they got their planning permission. We need to hold them to account. But if there is a better way of doing it, we should find it. It will be better for everybody.
You put your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, it was just about the self-build. I was trying to find, that's okay, a comment that Simon, my ward colleague, had made previously. So I think we just have to be careful when we have these self-build plots, that I think we police the developers a little bit more, because I'm quite happy to name the developer Places for People in Squirrelwood that's letting our residents down in Rookstown that promised fantastic new homes that they could sit and design themselves. And unfortunately, the experience of a lot of our residents in that estate hasn't been up to scratch at all. So I think it's just something we need to note as well, that definitely we need to be a little bit more careful when we're encouraging these developers to come in with these types of developments. Thank you.
Have we got any more on gypsies and travellers? No. So we go to page 83, housing delivery through neighbourhood plans.
It's just this 5115. The injunction only covers a certain area of Basingstoke Town plus areas of Bramley and Silchester, small size. Is there any opportunity to extend that at all to other parts of the borough?
Yeah, sorry, Colin. Yes, thank you for that. Sorry, it is something we are looking at, but there is a final decision on it. So yeah, once the decision is made, we'll better update you on that. But it is something we are exploring.
Yeah, Colin. So we have an unauthorised encampment in my ward just now that is on land that is maintained and operated by the parish council. And obviously because it's not within the injunction area, nothing's been able to be done. So they're having to use their insurance policy to enforce eviction. However, I have encouraged the parish council to have discussions with the borough council after that to see about extending the injunction area for it. So I will keep you updated on how we get with that.
Anecdotally, we've had them in Overton and Woodchurch.
Thank you. So now we're going to housing delivery through the neighbourhood plans. So it's page 83 to 91. Ken?
Yeah, I welcome housing through neighbourhood planning. Unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't work. King Square is a terrible example of that. It was allocated in the 2016 local plan 50 houses on 3 sites, none of which have been delivered. In fact, even one of the sites has now been approved for a care home. It is beholden upon us to make sure that these neighbourhood plans on the delivery section of it don't actually get the landowners or other developers who've signed up to deliver these homes, because that's now going to be 10 years till King Square delivers any housing at all. And frankly, that's outrageous for a community that requires more children into its preschool and certainly to the school itself. So I don't know if you could find a way to encourage parish councils to talk to the people who've allocated these sites to make sure that they deliver them. And I'm going to name them. The Guinness Trust own 2 of the sites and have not delivered 2 of them. So it's appalling, and they should be chastised for the fact that they've not done that.
Thank you for that information. So then we go on to page 91, additional protection for neighbourhood plans that allocate sites. Any comments on that? No. Next page, 92, housing design quality. There we go.
Yeah, if I may say so, the design quality is really important to us at DC, and I think both Ron, who sits on the committee with me, sometimes we're appalled at some of the designs that come in front of us. They're either too big, too impactful, and you don't feel that it's going to be a forever home, because the one thing that we should be trying to build in Basingstoke and Dean is communities. So if you're building a house, you ought to be trying to make that family stay there for as long as possible. Because once you've got roots, you've got neighbours, you've got roots, if you've got an adaptable lifetime home, then throughout the periods of your life, whether you're having children or becoming management and working from home, whatever it is, or retiring, that home can be adaptable enough to meet your future needs, because that means that people stay within a community for longer, and they build that community, that reliance on each other, which I'm afraid has not happened in many of the housing estates that we've got locally.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, on the same point there, from a development control point of view, this building for a healthy life criteria, I don't think the criteria is fit for purpose. When you see that only 58% of dwellings have been related to the variable, we need criteria which is a little bit more demanding and which we can apply pressure to through development control. I've got no answers, I don't know what the difficulties are, but I would like to see something which is more criteria based than actually in the current healthy life criteria, and something that when it's measured by you, by me, by anybody here, we come up with the same answer. I want it defined in such a way that we can apply a measuring tool to see if we've reached a minimum standard. I just feel as at present it's too subjective.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just going back to Ken's point, we have strengthened the local plan policies around building design. Ken, I know you were at several meetings at which I was, and you made very similar points. So please do let us know, once you've had a chance to review the whole plan document as to whether that works for you or not, whether there's more we can do, because obviously we're hoping to go to public consultation later on this month around that, so there's an opportunity to comment and get further updates to incorporate your thoughts there. And in terms of Ron's point, certainly happy to have a look about the Building for a Healthy Life standard and see if there are any better alternatives.
Thank you. Any more for housing standards? No. 96, then page 96, environmental management and climate change. Is anybody on page, David?
Yeah, so new development and strategic gaps, and
Yeah.
I could go on about this topic for quite some time. I appreciate that the officers are meant to do a job subjectively. However, the fact that you're talking here about further forward planning applications for new buildings and they weren't considered to affect the integrity openness of the gap. I had a planning application in my ward in our strategic gap for 5 homes, and the planning officer accepted it. And we took it to DC and got it thrown out, and we took it to the planning inspectorate and we got it thrown out, where it was conceived to actually impact on the look and feel and nature of the village. So I think perhaps just a little bit more a consensus, I think, amongst the team, perhaps a little bit more a reflection of taking that back. Because I'm now going to get into the second part as well, which is so going back to what Colin had said earlier on about settlement policy boundary, a strategic gap isn't a strategic gap if we redraw it every local plan update. It's quite frankly, it's not. We're fooling ourselves and we're fooling our residents. This local plan update, new administration, thank you very much, have proposed 440 homes in and around Sherburn St John in the strategic gap, and they're proposing to do that by redrawing the strategic gap. Now, the parish of Sherburn St John only has 560 homes in it, so you're almost doubling the village, really, and putting a football field in between them. So I think this most probably is where we really should be a little bit more brave and look at developing elsewhere if we're defining our strategic gaps. A strategic gap should be set in stone, really, or at least longer than 5-year window. Thanks.
Thank you. No more comments on new development and strategic gaps. Move over to the next page, 98, refusals in strategic gaps. Page 99. No. Then we have a few pages on the sites of special scientific interests. Yeah. No comments. Sorry then.
Yeah, I mean, triple SIs and sinks, we need to define them properly. I would just quickly say, I think Councillor Slimming brought one to committee that was on the 340. Okay, well, you know, the sink didn't exist. So, you know, we just need to make sure that our appraisal of what we've got and the jewels in the crown, because obviously I've got a triple SI in my ward, in fact in my village, is really important. So we need to make sure that that register is up to date, or is monitored, to make sure that, you know, when somebody comes forward and say, no, you can't have a sink, the sink doesn't exist anymore, people, because we need to make sure that we know where we're building, or they think, and where the red lines or the golden nuggets are, and we need to make sure that they are not built on. But we do need to make sure that that is actually a sink or a triple SI when it comes forward as a planning application.
Thank you. And sinks and yep, Joe first.
Yeah, the one that Ken's talking about is mentioned on page 100. I believe, I'm told by planning consultants, I don't know how correct this is, that once land has been allocated as a sink, no matter what's happened to it, it can't be redesignated as not a sink, which does seem a bit strange, because in this particular instance, it hadn't been aware that it was a sink. The place had been dug up, basically, and therefore it couldn't potentially be a sink because what had made it a sink was no longer there in this instance, and I'm sure that happens in other places. But we do actually mention sinks in lots of cases when we come to look at planning. And I suppose really what we need is a good definition of what a sink is and the rules around it, whether or not, once it's been allocated, whether or not it can be removed, because I believe it can't be, who's allocated it, and, you know, for what reason, so that when planning comes in, everybody knows why it's there. In this particular instance, we weren't aware it was a sink until the site had already been given planning permission for one of the houses, and this was the second house. So again, there was something that had happened, that I don't know what, but something happened in the process that the sink wasn't actually registered with us or known about. So I think it's something that we need to be more careful on if we are going to actually use that as a tool for actually deciding whether it's appropriate site or not.
Colin?
Yeah, I would totally support it. And moving on from sinks, SSIs and habitat enhancements, we've got to be stronger. Are we serious about biodiversity, geodiversity and nature conservation? We get developers come to DC and tell us they can control where slow worms, dormice, reptiles, newts can go. It's absolute rubbish. We need to strengthen it.
Sorry, Colin, have you jumped onto habitat enhancements? You're doing both, right? Fair enough.
But isn't a sink designated by Hampshire County Council rather than the borough?
They built them.
It's looked at by the Hampshire Biodiversity Information Centre, which is part of Hampshire County Council, so they do that. They review sinks, they have periodically, so you can change an area that is currently designated as a sink. If the reasons that it was designated for no longer exist, they can be de-designated as such. So then they do go through that process of review.
Potentially, could we have some information about how that gets reviewed and which ones are being reviewed and how that process works? Because certainly the planning world, the consultants who talk to me say that it can't be removed. So that's a bit of a diversion. It would be useful for me as a councillor to be able to argue back that comment.
Do that, Joe, for us. Want to get them here? Yeah. We got on our last item. We've got future works programs. If members wants to get them in and look at something, we can look around it. So habitat enhancements. All good. So 108.
Sorry, Chair. The 10% biodiversity net gain has already come in on the 1st of January. Are we likely as a local authority to try and improve that?
I think it doesn't come in until the 1st of February. So, I'm told even potentially later now. But I'm not going to say anything. So yes, in the local plan, we're pushing as hard as we can. We've said we want at least a 10% biodiversity net gain. If we want to go higher, we're going to have to evidence it, and the evidence we've got at the moment doesn't give us much scope to make it much higher. But we are pushing as hard as we can on that because I agree. I'd love to see a higher figure.
Would it be possible to review what applications have been approved recently? Because a number of ones that we've seen are up at 20% and greater. And therefore, maybe we could use the evidence of our current average to move the bar higher. That might be a thought.
I'm happy to do that if it helps us raise the number.
Thank you. Move on to Thames Basin Heaths on 108. No, all good. 109 green infrastructure. All good. 111 water quality. No, yes, I thought we would do. David?
Yeah, so what I'm concerned at is the response from the Environment Agency that, oh, sorry, we got our figures wrong, by the way, so your numbers are completely wrong. What can we do about that?
I think the reality is we can't do a huge amount because that's not within our remit. I'm not sure which government department the Environment Agency reports into. Department for DEFRA, I would have thought. Yeah, it's a failing there. So I mean, what we are looking at doing is, excuse me, as an administration, we are looking at starting our own monitoring of the waterways. Because you know the Environment Agency monitoring, it used to be annual. It's now moved to, I think, every 3 years. Which apparently is now best practice. I'm not quite sure how that can be best practice, but all of a sudden it's become best practice. So we're looking at starting to monitor it ourselves, which I think will give us an alternative source of information which we can benchmark against the Environment Agency data.
Yeah, so sorry, when I said what can we do about that, because I'm assuming what they're saying is, because that absolutely right, that 3 year period, they're most probably saying, well, we'll give you updated figures in 3 years' time when we do our next set of monitoring, or have they given us a commitment that they'll do a set of updated figures for us next year because they messed up the last one? So at least we have some rigid data that we can go on, because right now it affects us.
They do produce data that's more regular than the 3 years, so we do see that annually, but it's not their official data. So they do look at it. We have got a policy, obviously, in the plan that kicks in if there's any deterioration. So we monitor it, and that's why we went back to the Environment Agency to look at those 2 particular areas where that's happened, and that's the response that we've received. So we do continue to talk to them about that and flag these things to them, but yeah, there's only so much we can do.
As I remember when I was leader, we're a wealthy council. Could there not be some funding from us to improve the rivers that are within our borough? Now, I don't know how it would. We have to go to central government to fund it, but I think there is a need for us to get involved. Whether it be the Test, the Kennet, the Emborn in my ward, I think there is a requirement, and maybe it's something we could be a pilot scheme for something. I just want to make sure that we could access any money that is at all possible to improve the water quality within our borough.
We are looking at putting together a biodiversity strategy for the borough, and my understanding is that also includes looking at how we can potentially improve the quality of our waterways.
Yeah, so Hampshire County Council have just published their request for residents in the community to get involved with the local nature recovery strategy. Are we champing at the bit for that? Are we front at the door knocking on the door for that one?
I was just going to say, yes, we are very much involved in that. We're a member of a number of groups. In fact, an officer here is actually the lead chair on one of the groups. So yes, we are very active in it.
Could help the CEP committee looked at that at the last meeting, and obviously the biodiversity officer, and we're going to get the strategy coming up very soon. So you'll see what we're actually doing, working with Hampshire and looking at recovery, which obviously Hampshire have to lead on because the government have given them that right, but we're working very closely with them.
Thank you. Is that water quality done? So nitrite neutrality, this next one on page 113. Colin?
Yeah, I've mentioned this numerous times at DC, but the fact that we allow mitigation solutions out of our borough, sure, is there any indication that's going to change in a new local plan? Andy?
No, we are going to continue with that as the latest draft of the local plan is written as things stand.
Thank you. Any more comments on that then? No. 6.5 on 116, managing flood risks. No. That goes on to page 119, sustainable energy and water use.
I don't know if solar panels are a blight or a blessing, but I think it would be useful if we, now that the restrictions on land-based wind turbines are looked at, I've always been in favour of them. We have Hannington at the top of, we have a mast up there, which is not particularly beautiful, and therefore perhaps a conversation with wind turbine producers to have a couple of wind turbines at the top of Hannington, which we've got plenty of wind, mostly from me probably, to use, but it wouldn't be a blight on the landscape. And David and I travel often to Scotland. If you got the M74 on either side, there are huge wind turbines. It's been accepted by the population that renewable energy is an important element of the future, and obviously would green some part of the borough.
Yeah, we are looking at undertaking some investigation into exactly that, not just at Hannington, but across the whole borough as part of the local plan update. I'm just looking at Joe to see whether has that brief been developed yet for the consultants to look at, or are we in progress?
Yes, the brief has been written for renewable energy study, and we'll be going out to the market soon. Yeah.
Thank you for that update. David?
Yeah, so I guess it ties into both of them really, the water use and the flooding. So part of my work covers Charter Alley. We have a development there that was added in, that added 20 homes to the village of St Martin's Close. And as part of the commitment for that development, they had to build a pumping station to get water to sewage to Thames Water. For anyone who doesn't know, it's effectively too far away from the sewage, so they have to put a pumping station in there, takes all the grey water and waste and takes it into the sewage. And Thames Water seem to think it's fantastic, and every time we get a downpour like we have just now, it's not just ducks that are floating about the roads and the fields. It's it's the grey water and it's the sewage. And it's an interesting one because obviously we try and raise this with Thames Water, and the only way you can engage with them is through a web portal dashboard type thing. So we're going to try and do something about this. So we've gone to Rebecca. So Rebecca is going to lodge a complaint with them about that. But the other interesting thing is we also have a speculative development that has now just landed in Charter Alley. It's a gateway development. It's 3 houses that will no doubt try and lead on to a lot more. And we're going to use this as part of our grounds why we think this development isn't suitable. And we're most probably going to use it to counter the argument that Thames Water think that they are doing their statutory duty. Because we have evidence. I've stood next to water flooding out of this thing, dodging toilet paper as it's coming next to me in a video, so you can tell it's me. So we'll see, and I'll keep the committee updated on how that goes.
Any more on that item? No. We go on to air quality. No. Historic environment on 125. No. Section 7, economic development, unemployment, land and vacancy rates. 127. No. It's also in 128, 129, 130 as well, 131. Sure.
We've had quite a lot of discussion about the amount, quality of warehousing within the borough. Sorry, Andy, I know you grimaced at that thought, but uh, from many people, they say we've got too much, and yet we have an officer's opinion that we have not got sufficient. It's the reality that we just don't know, or is it that better sites are coming on board? Because obviously town centre sites are not as good as the ones on the periphery and access to the roads. So where do you see that world going of warehousing?
It's a very good question. It's not the officer's opinion, strictly speaking, that we've got that we don't have a sufficient amount. The officers have undertaken, as part of the local plan update process, they've commissioned consultants to provide us with an economic needs assessment, which uses a standard set of criteria, methodologies, benchmarks to look at how much employment space we need. I'll leave it to Joe to talk about the details, but the reality is that we are being told, based on the work that these consultants have done, which again uses methodology that is applicable across the country, that we do not have sufficient employment space.
And there's probably not that much to add, really. We will be publishing the economic needs assessment as part of the Reg 18 information, but in the cabinet papers, obviously, that are out there already, you can see what's in there in terms of kind of allocations and things. Yeah, so that responds to what is quite a high need. It's 99,000 square metres of need. That's what the economic needs assessment says for logistics and warehousing. So it's looking at potential allocations around Motorway Junction.
Yeah, I just does that take account of our great road network that we have within the borough? That calculation obviously is done independently, but what is the criteria in the cabinet papers, and I'll dig through it Saturday probably.
It's probably worth you looking at the economic needs assessment, because that explains what it is, but it directly relates to the methodology that's set out in national guidance, so it has to follow that.
Yeah, I will be very, very interested when that comes out as well, because I'm with Ken. Do you know what I mean? It's our unemployment rates are some of the lowest in the southeast of England. Our employment rates are well above the national average. Do you know what I mean? And I really don't think we need to build a distribution warehouse for Amazon or Lidl for Basingstoke residents, quite frankly. So I'll be interested in the methodology and how it's saying that's what we need for our authority. Thank you.
I welcome you scrutinising it and letting us know your comments. I'm not going to give my position away, but if there's an opportunity to change the number, then I'll be all ears.
Thank you. Go on to 132, job creation. Colin?
I think there's a global point, and it just reiterates this point on social housing and the need for affordable housing, because warehouse jobs in a new hospital, they're not the best paid in the world.
Thank you, Ken.
We talk about job creation, but it's about creating the right jobs. I think Colin's alluded to the fact that some jobs are better paid than others. Now, life sciences, innovation, technology, AI even, those are the sort of jobs that we should be encouraging and in creating. How do we make the need a reality?
It's a very good question, and there's no easy answer, as I'm sure you know, Ken, but there are things we're looking at doing. So, for example, in the local plan update, the policies that relate to employment space talk about exactly about some of the types of jobs you just said, technology, life sciences. And as you know, we are in conversations with at least one university around potentially bringing a campus to town. If we're able to make that happen, that's going to help us become a more attractive hub for those sort of high-skilled jobs, because they're going to have a pool of talented graduates right here in Basingstoke ready to go. So we are working on it, but there's no easy fix, because every town and city in this country would love to have high-skilled jobs of the sorts you described. So we're in quite intense competition with everybody else in order to deliver those.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thank you, Chair. Just keeping our feet on the ground, whilst it's great to encourage high-earning families to move into the borough, the point about social rented housing and affordability actually becomes even more critical if we do that. If you look at examples of places like Oxford, which has the university and a health science area just nearby, the problems that they have faced in employing people across the spectrum of income. People like bus drivers cannot afford to live in Oxford. So bus drivers suddenly become, there aren't any. You literally have to bus them in. Ridiculous. So we need to be really, really careful that we think of the whole community when we plan the types of housing and, yes, encourage the right employment, but we mustn't forget that the core of what makes our community works are the people that are working in service industries and quite low paid.
Thank you. Any more on that? So we go on to page 135, Basing View. No, we're all good. Next page, retail. That takes us up to 139. Rural economy. Ken?
I think it is important that we ensure that the rural economy thrives. As Jenny's alluded to, there is a need for stable staff at Parkhouse Stables in Kingsclere. There are groundskeepers in Cheam, but there are many businesses that require people. And therefore we need to ensure that they have the housing in the places that are required, so as the leap to work is not so bad or so long that they're having to drive in from Basingstoke or anywhere else. So and we need to understand what they require. Sometimes they need to just get through some of the paperwork that comes out of central government. It is really important that we understand businesses and what they need. So I think perhaps a rural economy forum, perhaps in the summer, we will come in, talk about their problems, talk about some of the successes. I mean, alluded in here is Bombay Sapphire. Well, I was in New York enjoying Bombay Sapphire drink there. So it is possible to set up a business to go worldwide here, and we need to make sure that those businesses get the right help and support, but also to understand what we as a borough council can do to ensure that they get through some of the paperwork that is a bane of their lives.
Thank you. Any more on rural economy? Go on to page 150, leisure. And go on to the next page, section 8, infrastructure. Any comments on?
We've already had Andy over the coals on what we can produce for infrastructure before we get the housing. But I do think it is important that we do some sort of, even if we don't initiate it ourselves, we make sure it's delivered. So the roads at Mannydown or whatever are in place before we start building all the houses. Now, I totally get that sometimes businesses have got to have a cash flow, but the reality is that we need to make sure that our infrastructure needs are well met. So sewage, David's just alluded to the situation with sewage, but water, although it doesn't look like it tonight, is an issue that we don't know where it is. Now, we can start drawing from the aquifers forever, perhaps, but the reality is we need to talk to other local authorities or some of the water companies, and I'm going to bang on about it again, the need for a reservoir that produces some of our water. And we've got some of the highest points in Hampshire. Gravity could get water down to Mannydown if you had it high enough. And these are the sort of things we should be at least thinking about. If that is a national infrastructure piece, then we go to national government and say, actually, we need this. What help can you provide? But we do need infrastructure to be delivered at the right time and at the right quantity to make sure any housing or employment is delivered properly.
I share your concerns, Ken, and we've seen in the past where the misery it causes where infrastructure isn't delivered on time and in the right place. There are a few things we're working on. The challenge, obviously, as you know, is that we have influence over the infrastructure. We don't have control over it. However, in the next local plan, the draft that we're working on at the moment, it includes a clause that for the major schemes, the ones that require master planning, and this would include future iterations of many down, the transport plans have to be submitted at the same time as the main master plan. So it's not something that's left to the end. And as you say, it's a pure expense for the developers. Therefore, it's something they hope that they can do at the last minute. We're going to mandate that they deliver those plans, they put them in place at the same time as the master plan. And certainly in the developments that are under our control, like many down, we will be looking at doing infrastructure, if not quite first, and certainly in line with the delivery to make sure that we don't repeat some of the mistakes that we've seen in the past.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thanks very much, Gary. So Andy, I mean, infrastructure, I get that it's really, really difficult. We have a mismatch between what our residents think that we're responsible for and what we are responsible for. However, I'm hoping that the local plan update will go beyond just when there's a major strategic development like Many Down, that we can do something, because what actually is happening on the ground is we have a multitude of smaller developments that are clustered together, that if they had been created at the time, that would be a strategic master plan. And yet there hasn't been infrastructure investment. So, we've got people waiting 7-8 weeks for doctor's appointment. We've got roads completely jammed, schools in the wrong place. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems we've got in sort of northeast Hampshire area, is we've got no secondary schools. Yeah. So there are loads and loads of problems. And whilst we can't solve the problems by ourselves, I feel this local plan update is one of the levers that we should be using, where we can see there are clusters of this residential development. Thank you.
You're absolutely right, Jenny. You've raised some of the challenges that we faced in the past and will continue to face in the future. The reality is, as you say, we've got some levers and we will use them. I think in the local plan update, we've pushed really hard to try and make sure that the infrastructure is provided in the right place at the right time. If you think we need to go further, then I'm very happily listen to your views. We've been pushing officers very hard, as Joe will testify, over the past 6 months or so, to make the plan policies as tight as possible. If we're able to make them that bit tougher, then you have my support. So please do suggest ways we can do that, and we'll work with the officer team to see if we can make those a reality.
Thank you. Any more?
I suppose just going back perhaps to Jenny's point is, when you talk to residents about infrastructure, they do talk about doctors' surgeries, roads and schools. But actually the list of 55 here, we've got dog walking fields, beauty salons and betting shops. And it's classified here as infrastructure, but probably not how our residents see it.
For that point. And we go on to 8.2, delivery of new infrastructure, which we've already alluded to, really. And transport, which is key. Over the page, 174, sports and community facilities and public open spaces and play. No? All good? Now we're on to Appendix 2. Does everybody want to go through Appendix 2? Just checking. Yeah. Appendix 2 is just giving you a whole list of our policies which will be going out on the local plan, Reg 18. Is that correct, Andy? Yeah? No? That's the existing plan. Sorry, the revised one's going out, coming in next week, yeah. Sorry, Ken.
Firstly, I must welcome the work that was done for the policies, and I think the adaptation of some of them to be better than they were was really useful. How will parishes be able to feed into some of those policies? Is there going to be a parish forum, or how are they going to be able to talk about those policies in around?
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So we're developing the plans for the public consultation at the moment. It will feature a number of different methods of communication. So we'll obviously have the online aspect via the website and by email. We are looking at going out into the communities with 4 public exhibitions. More details of which I'll be able to provide next week, hopefully once we get the green light from Cabinet. There'll be documents will be here as well in the council, and we will be contacting all of the town and parish councils in our borough to let them know this is happening. In addition to this, as you might be aware, Paul Harvey, the leader, and I have been out talking to a number of parish councils over the past few months. I think we're comfortably into double figures. And I think that probably it's 20 plus now. We've got a few more to see this month. We've had conversations with them which have been useful, building engagement with them. So they've been very much involved in the process to date, and we plan to continue those conversations going forward.
Well, the point about presenting them a policy is to also say, and this does, because you could say we want better air quality. You need to put what it does and why it does it on the end of what everything, the consultation piece. So as they're aware of, oh yeah, that means that will help for my stream or my village.
Well, those are certainly the conversations we've already been having with them, and we've highlighted some of the key areas of the plan updates, and we've made it very clear to everybody we visited that we're there to continue the dialogue with them. So I'm comfortable that through the main public consultation that we're going to be launching, plus the conversations that we've already started with our town and parish councils, that we are going to be working very closely with them, and they'll have an opportunity to properly express their views, positive and negative.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because I believe it is just you and the leader going, which means it's political conversations because the officers aren't involved, aren't they? Which I think is a little bit tricky.
Can I make a comment? They came to Tadley Town Council and it wasn't a political conversation at all. It was a very straightforward question and answers. We got answers the questions that people were asking, because obviously parish councils, as you know, have a direct contact with their public, and they need to know some of the answers when they get asked the question. And it was a very much an information gathering information. They didn't come to persuade us that we needed to support the local plan. I'm obviously there with a different hat on, but I sat back and let the conversation happen with independent councillors who sit on Tadley Town Council as well. And I'm sure that when they went to Pamba, which unfortunately I couldn't go to that meeting, that a similar happened. I don't think this was a political ploy. This was something, communication is important, and people know that they can come and ask the questions about whatever the administration is, and to actually meet the people who are doing the work, I think was very useful. And my councillors fed back that they were very pleased to have met both of them and to have spoken to them, because they didn't necessarily know them personally before that.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's obviously your experience. Obviously, the feedback we've received has been a little bit different as well. I'm just saying is that if officers had been present with you, perhaps it would have removed that look of perhaps a little bit of political gamemanship. Just that lesson learned, I think, for future.
I take your point. It was never our intention to exclude officers. I think the reality was, given that it's been 20 evenings and 2 hours each across the whole borough, sometimes involving quite considerable drives, I think that the genuine feeling behind it was that it would be unfair to ask officers to come along with us, rather than because we wanted to exclude them, to give us the opportunity to say things that we shouldn't be saying.
Thank you. Chloe?
Just really to concur with Joe, and I appreciate I'm coming to it from a different place to you, David, but parish councils, I find, are tend to be apolitical, and I don't think it would wash well with many councils to go kind of too political. But equally, I don't think there's anything stopping the previous leader from visiting 20 plus parish councils with the portfolio holder.
Thank you, Colin.
My experience was very similar, but the question to Andy is, you're visiting all the parish wards. What's happening in the town wards?
We've got the public consultation in general, so we've got the online channels, we've got the public exhibitions as well. Everybody is going to be notified. Once we get the green light from Cabinet, we'll be writing to every household in the borough, letting them know that this consultation is happening and encouraging them to get involved. So we're doing what I think everything we physically can to make sure that people A, are aware of the consultation, and B, are encouraged as much as possible to participate.
Thank you. So that's Appendix 2 dealt with, adopted local plan policies, which will be going out for a review. Now we're on to Appendix 3, land supply position 22 to 23, so that's between 179 and 203. Does any members want to have a comments on any of those? No, we're all good. Thank you. Monitoring made neighbourhood plans.
Chair, as I said, I think it is important that if there is allocations within neighbourhood plans, that they're brought forward. Otherwise, we are not delivering what people voted on in a referendum on neighbourhood plans, and therefore it fails in that public engagement piece that we don't deliver.
We just go through all different neighbourhood plans. I think you can tell me how many there is, but I think the next several pages are dealing with those. So that they're like site specific, really. Then we come to Appendices 6, latest conditions of water bodies. That's 378. Sorry, I'm looking at the side page here. It says it, just to confuse me, it's 396, yes. (396) to 401. John?
Hi, could I just have clarification what it actually means? It says chemical classification on 2019 fail all the way through, and then basically 2022 says does not require assessment. Can you clarify why that has changed from the last sort of 2015 onwards? Obviously that has been assessed, why we don't need assessment any longer. Yeah, specifically the Loddon, obviously. On page 378.
I'll have to look into that. I mean, this is the Environment Agency's data stuff, so yeah, I can let you know that.
Thank you. So that concludes the annual monitoring report. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joe and your team, for putting all that together. Does anybody want a break or want to, comfort break for a couple of minutes? Come back, say 5 minutes, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah? Cool. So we all good members now then? Do you want to go on to item 6, agenda item 6, infrastructure funding statement? Andy, do you want to make a statement on this? Or?
Yes, very briefly, thank you, Chair. The infrastructure funding statement is presented before you, and obviously very happy to take questions. Same with the proviso that obviously this covers the year to the end of March 23. Perhaps for me, the most interesting bit will be to get your comments on the strategic SIL policy going forward. So, as you might have seen in the introduction to the report, we're now building up quite a large reserve of SIL money, and we need to start spending it. And we've got a plan in place, which Matt will talk about in a bit more detail, to spend that money, and really keen to hear your views on how that's going to work from your perspective. So I think, without any further ado, I'll hand over to Matt if you're happy, Chair.
Good evening, members. I just wanted to highlight two parts that are set out in the report. The first is a commitment in para 3.9.1 to provide members with more information about Section 106 in their wards, and this is something which I've discussed with some of you in the past. Some initial information was published on the Members' Knowledge Hub before Christmas about the amounts of Section 106 within wards, but some more fine-grained information about actually what 106s have been signed in those wards, what money's been allocated, what money hasn't yet been allocated, what money hasn't yet been received, will be provided to members to give you more detail about what 106 is available there. As Councillor Konechka refers to, Appendix 2 to the RFS sets out a proposed process for spending the community infrastructure levy revenue. And it's proposed that this should be included as part of the capital programme update and strategy report that's due to go to full council in February 2024. So this sets out the process for spending the strategic SIL, so that's the money that the council retains to spend on strategic infrastructure, will be combined with the decision-making process for the council's wider capital programme. This will enable the funding to be used in conjunction with that much larger pool of funding in the capital programme and directed to corporate priorities informed by the infrastructure delivery plan. And members may remember we discussed the infrastructure delivery plan at this meeting back in October, I think. As well as this, a section of the funding will be made available for partner organisations such as health and education to bid for, based upon some clearly identified criteria which are set out in Appendix 2. It's important they have the opportunity to bid for funding because we recognise that they will provide some of the key infrastructure necessary to support the local plan. The other element of SIL is the neighbourhood portion of SIL. In the areas where there's parish and town councils, the neighbourhood SIL has been passed across to those parish and town councils twice a year, and as shown within the infrastructure funding statement, to date approximately £1 million has been passed across to those bodies. However, where there's no town or parish councils, as is the case in much of the urban area of Basingstoke and in some rural areas as well, the neighbourhood SIL is retained by the council to spend within that area. At the moment, the sums in each ward area are very small. Now, there's only one ward which has more than £10,000. Appendix 2, however, sets out a report for how this money can be spent, and it's proposed that where SIL has been accumulated, a discussion should be had with the ward members about how they like that funding spent. So that could be either put towards a local scheme within the capital programme, combined with other grant funding, for example, schemes going before the Community Infrastructure Fund to deliver a local project, or potentially put towards other projects identified by councillors where there's evidence to show that the relevant requirements have been met and the regulations require that the schemes have been subject to engagement with the local community. So that gives you an overview, I think, what maybe the key points of the IFS. The IFS itself provides the normal information that I think members have seen in past years about the 106 and the SIL that's been collected and spent over the monitoring year to March 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So, how do you want to tackle this? Do you want to delve in the strategic executive summary, or specifically go on to the points that Matt raised around strategic SIL? Or
Just a question on Matt, you've just alluded to. You've said that we are likely to fund health projects and education projects. It slightly worries me that it may allow other people to back out of their responsibilities. Hampshire County Council, for example, have got no money and might see us stepping in the education world as an opportunity to reduce their funding or commitments. How will we ensure that that is not the case?
So the criteria against which external bids will be assessed are set out in Appendix 2, and criterion D within there effectively requires that the funding has to be the funding of last resort. So they would need to demonstrate to us that they've exhausted all other channels to fund that infrastructure.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thanks very much, Chair. So two points really. The first one is around a community rather than strategic. And the big problem that we have is in the historical boundaries of parishes. So Sherfield Park Parish is a prime example of this problem. So Sherfield Park Parish is literally just the development of Sherfield Park. Nothing more, no less. It's got no space for development in it because it is it. It has now had hundreds, literally hundreds of houses built, new developments, Orham Green, Vine Park, Redlands, all round it. Proposals now for Miller Homes to put another 300 or 400 opposite. These have no community facilities. They all come to Sherfield Park, and yet Sherfield Park gets nothing. The monies go to other parishes. They go to Chinham Parish, Bramley Parish of all places, which is miles away. They do not come to the local community. So we are struggling because they get no additional funding. The other parishes are very, very happy because they've got additional money. They don't have to spend it on new development residents. They can spend it on their old infrastructure. So please can we look at how these SIL money is divvied up to see if there are ways of making it more equitable so that it flows with where residents are going rather than on historical boundaries. You know, if there is any latitude in that, I think it would be extremely helpful. On the strategic side, you know, I absolutely accept what Ken is saying about us not putting money in strategic infrastructure projects which should be funded by other areas. But I would just go back to my previous comments in this meeting where we have serious creaking, breaking down strategic infrastructure in that Chinham-Bramley corridor, where we need some investment from our infrastructure partners. So if there are ways of encouraging them to invest by us putting in small amounts, then I would say that would be really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
I would just say that through the work we do on the infrastructure delivery plan, we are engaging with those partner organisations and having discussions with them to sort of really find out what their needs are and understanding, you know, what the cumulative needs are the result as well, going back to your point earlier about lots of small developments and the impacts that they can have.
Thank you. The way I was thinking of this is we go through the executive summary, like start off the first few pages of sort of giving us background and on 106 and SIL. If we start off at the top of page 409, strategic SIL, and it mentions Appendix 4 there, that the council have nearly got £4 million, and it's going to be coming to the full council in February. And they've got a list in Appendix 4 on page 448. And it's asking, do you think these are the right priorities? Do you want to say something, Colin? Yeah?
Was one going to be one of my questions, because this was adopted, infrastructure list was adopted December 2020. Yeah. Can we have an update of what's been completed on that list before we can get our own requests in?
It did say that in the report, didn't it, Matt?
Well, I'm waiting for you to tell me that.
Yeah, no, we do acknowledge in the report that the infrastructure statement is old and out of date. But what the infrastructure statement does is it just sets out things that could be funded from SIL. So it's really very broad and high level. What we're seeking to do through our work on the infrastructure delivery plan, the discussions we're having with our partners, is to identify actually what those priorities should be. And members may recall that the IDP had a prioritisation system within it to identify which infrastructure is the most important. So we recognise that the infrastructure statement is old and not really fit for purpose in its current form, and we'll be updating that in due course in line with the work we're doing on the infrastructure delivery plan, which will be further enhanced through the Regulation 18 consultation and the discussions we have with partners resulting from that.
Thank you. So if members have got strategic projects they think that needs to be added, this is an opportunity now to add it.
Well, I expect those projects to appear on the council's infrastructure delivery plan, rather than to necessarily appear, in the first instance within this document.
Sorry, did you?
So are we the strategic partners then, the borough councillors and the parish councils, etc.?
We feed into it, don't we? I mean, we've got. So we are publishing the IDP as the borough council, and we've developed an infrastructure delivery plan based upon evidence-based documents identifying what infrastructure is needed, and through the Regulation 18 consultation, the opportunity to consult upon that document. And if you feel some infrastructure may be overlooked, that's clearly something that we can go back to the evidence to scrutinise to see whether something else is required.
Yeah, if I'm able to clarify. So obviously this is the infrastructure funding statement that we're looking at tonight. Matt's also been referring to the infrastructure delivery plan, which forms part of the local plan update process. The infrastructure delivery plan was put before this committee back in September. Admittedly, it was the final thing after we went through the spatial strategy allocation, so perhaps we weren't all quite as focused as we would have been at the start of the meeting. So this committee has had a chance to take a look at that already and feed back into it. But I think the point that Matt's trying to make is that this will go out to public consultation as well as part of the Regulation 18 for the whole local plan, the infrastructure delivery plan bit. So that is an opportunity certainly for the town and parish councils to comment on it, and equally an opportunity for everyone around this table as well to have another chance to have their say.
Thank you for that, Andy. Sean?
So, just for clarification, could SIL money be used for maybe prioritising, maybe refurbishing or rebuilding the West Side Community Centre that's got the problem with RAC?
There's no strategic SIL must be spent on the provision, improvement, replacement, operation and maintenance of infrastructure needed to support the development of the area. So if it fell with that definition, there's technically no reason why it couldn't be, subject to the decision we made that that's where the money should be spent.
Sorry, again, just to clarify that point. So if you have a look at the bottom of page 453, Sean, it talks about the criteria that certainly if it's a third-party project that it would need to meet. So that gives you an idea. I think West Side is one of ours, isn't it? It's partly ours, partly Hampshire. Yeah. So that would probably fall under these criteria. So if we can link the investment to any of these criteria, then we've got a chance to do it. That's probably the clearest indication we can give at this stage, off the top of our heads, without going into a more detailed analysis.
So I just say it's probably not a strategic piece of infrastructure. That's probably something that potentially could be funded through the neighbourhood SIL portion, potentially.
Apart from we don't have a lot of development in Southam, so yeah. Sorry, Ken?
It's on that point about regeneration. I wonder if there could be an allocation directly to the regeneration programmes to ensure that infrastructure is part of the rebuild and the regeneration of it. I think it would be a really good signal if we say, yeah, we're prepared to put some of our money in alongside our housing association partners to make sure that we boost the regeneration, make it much more a community thing, and one that the borough can involve itself in.
We would be a key player, you know, talking about West Side. I mean, we were talking about Southam regeneration. You know, we own the building and it's not fit for purpose at the moment. So it's a major problem that the borough has to tackle face on in the next few months. So all relevant bodies, hands to the pump, really, the way I see it. Sorry, who was next? Sorry, Joe?
I don't know what page this is, 8, I think. There's information here about things that have already been, monies that have already been put forward. I was quite surprised to see that the development in Tadley had money allocated towards affordable housing and transport. And obviously, after seeking the plan, what on earth and transport have been given? And it appears that it's a traffic regulation that the county, I believe, should be paying for. So I was a bit miffed that, in fact, that money that we get nothing in Tadley was actually used to actually produce a traffic regulation stuff, presumably to stop people parking at the junction where it's going to come out, and obviously it's not there yet. And affordable housing. There are people building that affordable housing that McCarthy and Stone decided they didn't want to do. So, again, perhaps somebody could tell me how much money McCarthy and Stone or somebody was given to produce the affordable housing there. Not that I'm against that affordable housing, but I wasn't aware that somebody had been given money out of 106 money, presumably, to pay for that. And is usually traffic regulation something that comes out of 106?
So I'm a little bit unclear about the question about affordable housing. Are you asking how much the commuted sum, was there a commuted sum from that development? And you're asking how much that was? We can find that out for you and feed that back. Okay.
Thank you.
We looked at all the 106 spending on infrastructure, and if we go to page 427 and 429, this tells us what we've spent the money on, but it doesn't indicate what impact it's made. How many more disabled people are using these facilities? How many more people are picnicking in Wooten Hill than would have been the case? We've got accesses here. We ought to find out what the impact is on these, not just what we've done and the money's been spent, but it would be useful to say, actually, that was a really good piece. It meant that another, in the case of the allotments, we got another 20 disabled or mobility challenged individuals are using the allotments. There is no impact on any of this. And yes, it's great we've spent the money, but unless it's going to the right project where it makes a difference to individuals, I'm not sure we can hold our hands up and say, yeah, the money's been well spent.
Thank you. Any more? No? So,
the S106 was defined at the time of the planning application being approved.
so then we go on to 3.18. Neighbourhood seal has given you a list in figure 2 of all the monies that have been spent in the neighbourhood areas. I mean, it goes on to your question now, Ken. Is that money, you know, the parishes have identified that money and they've spent that, but, you know, is that beneficial? You would only know asking the people there, isn't it, really? Again, it's all retrospective, isn't it? And then let me go into the next one on page 4010 again. Talks about monies up to March 2023 as well, again. some areas have an awful lot of money, like Old Basing and. Should we go on to the glossary or members happy or sorry, are you happy, Matt? Have we given you a strategic steer yet?
I think it's been helpful hearing members' sort of principal concerns and the main things we need to be thinking about. Yes.
Jenny.
Thanks. Could I just make a comment on Appendix 4, infrastructure list? I think it's page 448 of our pack. It's still got in here. I know it's just a list of hypotheticals, but it does still have things like construction and implementation of Chinham Railway Station, which, just sets hares and hounds running all over the place. It's not going to happen. And I think just having that kind of thing in these documents doesn't help. Is it possible to take that kind of stuff out? Or does it have to stay there forever?
I think we made a commitment that we're going to update the infrastructure list. The infrastructure list, is old, and because it's so broad, and therefore not restrictive, it's just sort of being rolled forward. But as part of the work we're going to be doing over the next year around the infrastructure planning will allow us to refine this list and update it fully.
All right, then I'd take it members are happy then, and we can look at the conclusions in item 11 then, as set out in the appendices in the document itself. So I take it we're happy, yeah? Right then, thank you. Go on to the next item, agenda item 7. So works programme. So on the next, thank you Andy for attending, thank you, yeah. On the 29th is our next meeting, so we've got the town centre strategy. It's going to be more of an update paper really. We're not going to be really scrutinising much, are we? I would say, Sarah, would you say?
Yeah, just to clarify, Chair, the town centre strategy is an approved strategy document that was approved sort of December 2022. So it will be an update report if the board group are happy with that.
Yeah, we're happy. So on that particular day, we're going to economic growth framework. That's looking into the future, isn't it? Shaping the council's new economic outlook. So that will be something more scrutinising for the committee to look out. But we need to get some items on the agenda for pre-May. We haven't got a March meeting, but a May meeting. I think your suggestion earlier, looking at triple SIs and sinks, get somebody in from the county, an expert, saying, this is it, this is the criteria, and we can scrutinise and ask questions and ask whether that is the best policy. It's a strategic planning item, isn't it? So it's,
we will have adopted the biodiversity strategy at the next meeting, I hope, because I haven't seen the papers yet, but I'm assuming that it's going to come forward in January, so that might form some of our discussions as well.
Yeah, I think we got consensus on that one, yeah. And then regeneration, we've touched on it tonight. There's regeneration going on in Buckskin and South Ham, and they've gone out to consultation, but it'd be good to get the feedback from Sovereign, what that consultation was and what are their plans going forward, and yeah, that's the idea, that's the way I'm thinking about, Sarah, is getting them in here.
Are they not coming to scrutiny? I've got a feeling that the housing associations have been invited on the list. I know we've got a meeting soon to talk about with the chairs. I've got a feeling that there was a suggestion that we got housing associations into some meeting. It may be scrutiny, that's not a committee I'm on, so perhaps just need to check that we're not going to be bringing them in twice to ask them the same questions.
Yeah, I'll check that, Chair, for duplication and establish where Sovereign Network Group are at with their consultation engagement on Buckskin and Southam, and bring that back to you if that's okay.
Yeah, so, so we've got two suggestions there.
Maybe as well the comment that Councillor Rattigan and I discussed earlier about how we could actually help in those areas where they don't get still or 106 or any building, how we could potentially move forward on that in the future. Again, that might be something that would be quite interesting to people to have that conversation.
Yep. How do we fund schemes within the sort of the non-neighbourhood areas?
And it isn't just Tadley, it is Borkhurst and Pamber, because the whole area are put together in one lump now, so and we cover both areas.
Also, we bring this up at the next sort of overviews for the scrutiny chairs, and you know, get the trying to work programme a bit more formalised, and start looking at some policies maybe coming from the cabinet to do a bit more scrutiny, because it's very retrospective tonight, isn't it? But I know it's some very important information there on how the borough's doing, but ideally we would like to start scrutinising some policies going forward. If that's it, that's the end of the meeting. So thank you very much, and safe journey home. Thank you.